Hey everyone, it's Blake. Welcome in to episode number 14 of our Exploring the CVerse series here in TEW 2020. We are on to PGHW, Pride, Glory, Honor Wrestling. And I will tell you right now, this is probably one of the more intriguing ones that I've looked at. And, I always take my notes before I record these and kind of look through the companies and see what I like, what I don't like, and try to make that very clear to you guys in the videos, and really try to be more on the optimistic side of, hey, here are some ideas to work with. Here's a narrative for this company you could go with. There's a lot to like about PGHW, and right now, like I said, I would probably put this in my top tier in terms of if I decide to start a CVerse save, which I'm going to eventually. This is on the short list of possibilities, and I know it may be different. It may not appeal to everyone because of the schedule, which we'll get to in a second. But I do think there's a lot of fun elements and very fascinating elements involved with this company right now. Let's jump into it. Seventh in the world, a medium-sized company. So that's a step up of some of the ones we've done recently here. $175,000 to work with. You've got 85% prestige, just given the long history of this company and what it's achieved. 62% momentum. We'll talk about that momentum here in a second. But looking at the size, as I said, starting as a medium company, pretty much hit all the check marks there. Now we're on the road to big. And to get there, we got to get 77 popularity in at least 5 regions, which must include these specific ones here. But as you can see, 65 everywhere. But you focus on these, 4 regions, sort of the home region here plus 3 others. Excuse me, not plus 3. Any of the others, any of this other group is what you have to have there to be able to reach that big size, which is certainly achievable now. You can look at this and say, well, 65 to 77 doesn't seem like a lot, but as you guys know, that can take a little time because, it is a matter of putting together good shows, but it's certainly something that the path is there to take advantage of and possibly make that jump back up to big. And why I say back up is because we look at sort of the current state of the company. It's in decline. Not only a decline, a steep decline, given, again, kind of going through the period where they had sort of the generational stars with this group here, and then, adding that to the mix, the style that we're going to talk about in a second, as you guys know, more of the hard-hitting, injury-prone type style, and guys getting injured, guys retiring, and it's just been something where, PGHW heading in the wrong direction here. And that becomes one of the sort of starting elements, I think, if you want to go with this company. Can you create that next golden generation of stars? And I think that's a great sort of goal to have in mind going into this thing because, again, that can sort of saying, all right, we're going to return this company that was created in 1996 back to its former glory, which was built around just unbelievable matches with a group of generational stars. Can you do the same thing? I think that's a really fun thing to look at now that this company is, again, it's a medium size. Can you get them to big? Can you get them higher? It's a great sort of selling point, I think, to use this company. Worth noting here before we get into everything else, you do have potential penalties on the production front. So you can look at those if you decide to upgrade there. Keep in mind, you do have only $175,000, which is not a ton necessarily for a company that's ranked 7th in the world. So that is something worth noting there on that. All right, let's talk about that style and what has kind of led to this. Of course, the Physically Intense Bureau is kind of the style here. And, certainly just think about your sort of traditional Japanese wrestling type style where it is all about physicality and just a lot of hard-hitting matches where the story is told via the match, not anything else. There's no sort of, again, glamour glitz, it's the best way to put it. Like, it's all about telling the story in the match, and that is the focus here as you look at sort of this style. And as I said, understanding that the hard-hitting aspect is going to mean more potential for higher injuries, more frequent basis. In-ring psychology is important. So if you're going out, you're trying to find other stars maybe to add to the roster, or if you're just booking matches themselves, you need to have the psychology because that is going to be important. When you look at some of these matches, I think definitely understanding that that's going to be a big element to putting together the best matches. Of course, that's with any company, but specifically here, knowing kind of what's at stake, That is a big part of it. No face heel divide, no surprise there. And look, 100% matches, like that's it. That's the starting point. Of course, you can always tweak this if you'd like, to have a few more, elements of the angles or just interviews. I think that would be the route I would go if I was going to say, hey, if I have to make one tweak, I would probably want to find a way to maybe just add in a couple interviews on an event or something just to kind of push the story forward. Because it's harder to do if you're, I guess, just trying to do it without it, but it's also possible because you can write it in your notebook, you can put it in your notes, whatever you want to do. You can keep up with the stories that way, but it's 100% matches. So it's all about the matches. And, in a sense, I think that's kind of entertaining to think about because you can just book matches and try to get the best matches and find the best pairings and do it that way. And boom, you're on your path to getting the big, perhaps. But it is worth noting too, 20-minute matches to get that world-class score. So you've got to have at least 20 minutes. So longer match types, physical intensity, yeah, injuries are going to happen. So keep that in mind as you start to book this company. You're going to have injuries, and it's just a part of the beast that is this style. So, all right, let's look at the events and the TV, which there's no TV at the moment, but I think we'll talk about that in a second, actually, when we look at the broadcasting situation. But, all right, it's a touring schedule. I would highly suggest, if you want to go back to episode 8 in this series, we looked at Burning Hammer of the Wrestling Gods, and we kind of went through the touring schedule a bit more there. There were actually some great comments, I think, on that video that talked about how people run their own touring schedule in these games. And by the way, I say this about all these videos, but the comments are everything. So you guys leave your feedback on how you've played with any of these companies, how you've run the companies, the touring schedule, any of that, and in any of these Exploring the CVerse series. Those are very helpful, not just for me, but also for everyone else out there who maybe watches these videos and are trying to get some tips and tricks on how to play as certain companies. The touring schedule is a big one. I've been asked a lot about that. If it's me, and I have played with some of these touring schedules before, you've got your monthly event, right? And on all these scenarios, and look, this is one where you've got a lot of, highly regarded, sort of historic, legendary events. You've got the season finale in March, Night of Pride. These are high events in terms of prestige. And so you're building to these big ones. So you're not going to give away, your great match here on Destiny Tour Day 3. You're not going to give away one of your blockbuster main events on that tour. So what do you do? Again, if it's me, you're booking a lot of multi-man tag team matches, tag team matches straight up. That's the route you're going. That's what you're going to get on some of these shows. Sure, for me to keep it fresh, I'd probably throw in, kind of a surprise sort of big main event on one of these shows. Maybe it's a singles match, but more than likely, you're really building the combination of multi-man tags to get to this particular one. And I like that. I know it's not for everybody, but I like putting different, stars together and just kind of having tag team matches because it does, it will at time too. It'll make it harder for the match ratings and those kind of things. But these are where, you're delivering in terms of the rating, like the pushing the company forward. It's really going to be dependent on these big shows because of the importance level of these shows and just the roster that you have, which we'll get to in a second. So if you want to go that route, that's one of kind of my approaches when booking the sort of touring schedule. A lot of multi-man tags or 2-on-2 tag team matches. But, not to say you can't use singles matches, but you're just saving, your top matches, certainly for the bigger shows, which just makes sense, right? So that's kind of the way to do it, I think, on that. And so yeah, it's your normal. Look, I know you're looking at this, you're like, whew, that's a lot of shows. If you never booked a touring schedule before, or a touring company, yes, these are a lot of shows to book, but it can be rewarding because you are building to these big shows. And so again, a lot of tips and tricks. Episode 8, Burning Hammer. There's some in the comments. I'm sure there'll be more in the comments here on this one. So if you're looking for tips on how to book touring companies, you can find them there. Speaking of kind of the broadcasting situation, so currently, if you want to look at it, again, this company a little bit bigger than some of the other ones we've done, but they are at a medium size. You've got J Remote 1 here. This is, kind of like small deal. You've sort of got it there. You can get, this is for events, excuse me. You've got the tour highlights on Japanese Sports Vision. When you look at, again, the coverage, it's really all here. So I don't know, maybe you have the goal to expand, Pride, Glory, Honor, Beyond. just Japan, and you want to go, get a little bit of coverage, very small maybe, tiny in the America or anywhere else, that can be part of your goals. You can look at broadcasters. I did filter it here by ones that would negotiate, and when you really look through all of them, like I said, I mean, they're all, they're all in Japan, and they're actually, you've got this one here. So this is one, you could possibly look at this as well here on this one. So a subscription platform where you've got coverage pretty much everywhere. So that's something to really keep in mind if you want to start to expand the footprint a bit there. So I would always, especially when you have these kind of companies, you certainly have to keep that in mind if you want to go that route of looking at possibilities for how you expand your coverage and growing and all that stuff. But as we said, sort of the narrow focus of understanding that to get to big, it's really all going to be about growing right here. So, and that just comes with putting on great shows. So, all right, to the titles we go. Boy, what a great, this is what really has got me going. Like I'm excited looking at this group here, knowing that talent has something to shoot for. So you've got the Elite Series and the Elite Tag Team Series. So what these are, it's kind of set up as a tournament. And look, you can book this however you want to book it, right? Like you can book this as, whatever you see as the Elite Series. It can be, maybe it's a different tournament setup. Maybe it's more round robin stuff, building to it. I don't know. Like there are ways you can do this. So I think that's something to keep in mind. This can kind of be your own thing, but it is the highest of the high in terms of, again, prestige and looking at it. As you can see here, it's sort of the more match of the year candidates than any other event in history. So that is the bar. That is what you're aiming for. And, you look at just different, like we said, it's sort of annually, the Night of Pride. So like I said, the round robin, I guess you could do that if you ever wanted to build it up to maybe just that one night, or you could go all in and say, hey, Night of Pride, boom, that's what we're going with. Like we are going with this huge tournament, all the top stars. And again, that is your biggest event of the year. So the Elite Series, again, however you want to sort of set that up, but there's a lot of ways to get there. And then you've got your tag team series here, which basically is the same thing, right? You're just doing it in tag team form. This one doesn't take place till November. So you've got Elite Series in March, Elite Tag Team Series in November. So that's something to look at. You've got the Glory Crown title, the biggest one. Like it's the, as you see here, all-time legends have held it. This is the top belt in the promotion. And so you've got the tag team belts. And so, you've got this one. I think the historical Japan one's kind of interesting. It can be good for building up kind of young stars. So you can kind of go out, find your guys you want to build the company around, have them hold a title, pretty lengthy title reign or something. Then you got the international titles. You can see here, it's never really caught on with fans, sort of like a filler title. But, you could perhaps change that a little bit if you want to develop some relationships. Make it sort of the international championship, people defending in different, have other workers come in from other companies, challenge for the international title. That's something you could do. So that's an idea if you want to build up the prestige there with that. All right, let's look at some of the other stuff. Obviously, there are no stables, no storylines. You don't have a figurehead. And let's see some other stuff here. Backstage, we forget to do this on some of them, but I don't think it's a huge deal. 81% in terms of the backstage rating, so that's worth noting. Don't have any child companies, but you do have a training facility here, the dojo. So you can kind of upgrade training level, all that kind of stuff if you want to do it. Obviously very highly respected in terms of where it's at. You've got the training level currently at 70%, so not too much further to go in terms of training your stars. With that, I will point this out too, and I think this goes for the bigger companies more so, but we talked about kind of in looking at the the company as a whole and where it stood, look sort of the legendary group of wrestlers. That's always something I say when you look at the Hall of Fame. You can go back and kind of look at some of the, build a narrative out of that. You can look at some of those generational talents, like for a company like this, you're wanting to build around, hey, we want to get back to this age, or we want to build kind of a new group of stars. Well, I don't know. Like, is there a way to add in some other guys that maybe are in the Hall of Fame? You bring them in. You kind of have, which is harder to do here because you're not having matches. You're only having matches. You're not really doing angles, but it's always something to look at. The Hall of Fame is interesting. Kind of gives you the background on the company who have been the top stars. So I always find that especially fascinating in the bigger companies that have a bigger Hall of Fame, and you can go through and kind of see who's there with that. Before we get into the actual roster itself, let's look at the alliances, of course, you're not a part of the Confederation of the Territories. But if you look at the relationships, obviously, Burning Hammer, hostile attitude. So workers can be stolen. That's obviously a possibility. So you have to keep that in mind, given the hostile attitude there. Maybe you want to improve that relationship. I don't know. You do have, talent trading option here with SciShow. So you can look at that, and perhaps you want to say, all right, we're not going to steal workers, but you can also trade talent. So that's an option there. But something else, you can send workers on excursion, which you see here. There's 4 already on excursion. You can kind of see when they're going to return in your main booking, page here. But you can send workers to TCW on excursion. So that's a big one. Obviously, if you want to send people there, you can also send them to VWA, Victory Wrestling Association, which we haven't got to yet in the series, but we will at some point. So you've got a few options there if you want to send workers on excursion. You can see here, you got, which again, the excursion takes a little while, right? So these workers won't be back for a couple years here, so that's worth noting as you go and look at that. All right, to the roster itself. We'll go look at the creative real quick. You've got a pretty good group here. Kawashima's here, Ugaki, Jimbo, all pretty much 31 to 36. And having a big roster is important. Having a roster with stars is important because you're going to get injuries. And that's just the way it works with the style. You've got a couple next big things here. You've got Haas prospects. And this one, all under pretty much 29 years old. So that's nice to have. But when I look at this roster, and it is impressive. As you see here, you got 39 workers to start at the moment. As I said, you got to remember, certainly possible workers can get stolen, especially given the hostile attitude with Burning Hammer. So always a possibility that could happen. But you've got, I'm just going to pull this up. You guys know I like to go to the star quality, right? So we're going to start at my usual range of 70 here. And you see how many different people are on here kind of at 70. But even if we up this to, we could go to 75, you're really only dropping a couple. So you've got some pretty top tier potential stars here. And that's, like I said, if you want to use the idea of building the next group of generational talents, you've got a lot of options to work with on this roster. And I think that's really fun to look at. You can go up and down the list here, and you can see as I'm going, like some of these. Of course, Jack Avatar at the top as always. Jack's got ridiculous stats for an 18-year-old, but nonetheless, you've got a lot of good workers, and of course, the skill is important as we look at these skills because they're going to really be everything, right? It's not just the star quality on microphone and that kind of stuff because you don't really have that. It's 100% matches for events and for everything else. So you don't really have that right now, but as you start to look at this group, which as we said, Kawashima is kind of the top dog right now in terms of, kind of that guy who can be the ace. As you see here, he's as vital to them as any single worker has ever been to a wrestling company. So if you want to see what the pressure is right now on Kawashima, there it is. Like as a 36-year-old, the weight of the entire promotion is on his shoulders. And I love the graphic. I just think that's a good-looking graphic. So I really like that. But, you can go through all of these. Magnum Kobe, only 34 years old still. We know, like, every time I played his, him and WLW, I used to use him in so many different variety of ways. And, so again, this is just a tremendous roster. And you would have to go up and down it to really see what's there. But I'm already booking matches in my head, and I haven't even started this, save as this company. But there's a lot of fun ideas to work with. If you really embrace kind of this sort of style and the touring schedule, the tournament aspect, as we said, with the Elite Series, the Tag Elite Series, there's so much you can embrace here because you got a lot of good star quality. And, of course, as I said, you've got really just a tremendous roster of workers here. As you can go up and down the line, you can see the in-ring skill. Young stars like Takano here, 25 years old, the historical Japan title. We talked about that, giving it to a young star, but look at the stats. Like they are pretty good, and you can continue to build that up. So I think the roster is tremendous, and there's a variety of styles. That's what I like the most. You've got powerhouses, you've got the impactful wrestlers. As we go down, you've got some technicians, you've got strikers. There's a great variety of styles here, and I think that can make for fun tournaments. That can make for fun multi-man tags, as we said. And yeah, just a great group of young prospects, younger prospects, and the tremendous star quality that's there, and just combining that with the in-ring work. I think this is quite a starting point, because it's easy, as I said, to start with maybe one of the top companies and just say, all right, we've got it all. What now? But like, you do have the narrative here of a company that is basically falling down and further down than that. Like, how do you build them back up? Can you take this group on the roster right now and take this company kind of back to, pun intended, the glory days of Pride, Glory, Honor Wrestling? That's the fun part, I think, and that's, again, if I choose this company, if this is one I play with, that's what I would do. Is that's my goal. My thinking every time I build it up is, how do we get this company from medium to big? How do we kind of get it back to the glory days? And who are that group of stars, which we looked at, Kawashima, some of those other guys that are there. Can they reach that level and to push this company back where it needs to be? So there you go. There's some thoughts on Pride, Glory, Honor Wrestling. I think a very fun Japanese promotion here to work with, and one that I would definitely suggest, and one reason why I'll say this, and it's 100% matches. So like, you're not having to necessarily go too far into thinking about character development, all this other stuff. You're really just trying to use the match element of telling stories, putting together fun tournaments that you can tell stories through. And like I said, sort of doing it through the matches, that's always a different challenge. And it's an interesting challenge, especially for someone like me who's worked with, as you guys know on the channel, WWE, AEW, WCW. Like, these are all promotions that, yes, in-ring quality matters, but there's so many more kind of entertainment aspects to it. I like the idea of just saying, how do I put together the best matches to get to the best, to the biggest shows, put those combinations together and figure out, who's going to get me my 100 match rating. Like, those are the kind of fun things you can look at with this promotion. So there you go. So some thoughts on that. I guess quickly we can look at, if you want to kind of just look at, I guess, Japan in and of itself. I mean, that's something you could look at on that, and kind of the state of where PGHW is at. Of course, in front of them, you've got Burning Hammer here at 5, which is also a medium as of right now. But we know, I think we talked about that, they can certainly get there. And so, WLW is kind of in that small range. And so, BCG is there. So we'll get to some of these other companies we haven't got to yet. But that's kind of where, if you look at the companies around them and kind of what they're working with in Japan at the moment, that is something to sort of consider. So there you go. As always, be sure to like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. And if you have any thoughts on PGHW, if you played with them, let us know in the comments. Give your tips and tricks, all that good stuff to help other players. And again, I appreciate you guys supporting the channel, supporting this series, and a lot more stuff on the way here, as not only doing CVerse stuff, but we'll have a lot more sort of the real world stuff, getting back more regular into that as I catch up on my notes and try to remember all the storylines I had in place. So we've taken a little bit of a break at times on several of those saves, but we'll try to get back to doing that. I've actually got one idea for a new save, which will be a real world one as well, just kind of adding more flavor here to the channel. And again, I appreciate you guys as always. But up next here in our Exploring the CVerse series, we will continue to explore the CVerse as we are 14 episodes in now. And next up, we will go to a company I just mentioned. We'll stay in Japan as we go to BCG, Black Canvas Grappling.